All right, what's going on, folks? Hope you're doing well today. Welcome back to another Eurofront Let's Play video, and we're jumping into the month of June 1942 in our Eurofront playthrough. And for any World War II historians, World War II war gamers, World War II military simulator folk out there, I think this video is for you. Hopefully we can have some fun with it. So with that said, I say we just jump right in and stop dilly-dallying so much and actually have some fun with the game. So this is a very interesting month right now because it is summer 1942. Because it's summer 1942, we're going to see the continuation of a German strategic initiative on the Eastern Front. I say German, I probably should, more accurate term would be Third Reich, right? Nazi Germany. And not just Nazi Germany, but all the other nations that were part of that Axis coalition. This includes Italy, right? Fascist Italy under Mussolini. It's also going to include some of the nations that joined the Axis, including Romania, Hungary, Finland. It could be some Yugoslavian units or special units. The list goes on, but it's not just German. It's going to be a multi-nation process. And it's technically, this event was what happened in 1941 with Operation Barbarossa. But as most of us who are watching this channel probably already know, Operation Barbarossa historically, as well as in our playthrough, just was a bit overambitious. It didn't achieve its goals to defeat the Soviet Union. Yes, it conquered a lot of territory, but as you can see here on the map, the Red Army is still a functioning army, a very powerful army, and the Soviet regime is still active. So the war is not over. Now, of course, we're playing a simple war game, so our focus is more on the military side of events. I want to make that very clear for anybody who is just curious about learning about history. It's a very sensitive subject, so it's important that we try to give it as much respect as we can, because unfortunately, this is not here to say that war is a good thing. It certainly is a deep subject that I frankly think deserves a lot more attention to study, seeing as how it's been happening so much. But it's a very complex subject, right? And so we're still trying to figure it out. I think World War II is an incredible, if there's any silver lining to what World War II was, besides all the technology that's come from World War II, I think it's the fact that we can learn so much about the world today, even from World War II. So what I hope with that is that for anyone who's interested in understanding World War II, this is like a pretty good environment just to kind of get a more detailed sense of the war, especially if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details. But it's just the beginning. I mean, there's so much that goes into military history. And then, of course, there's the other side of history, which is history of war. So military history, history of war are like two different fields of study. With military history, as the name suggests, it focuses more on like the actual militaries themselves, while the history of war can focus really on encompassing the whole entire war. And so I think for something like that, I would recommend checking out a channel like the World War II channel. It's an incredible channel. Indy Neidell and his team, I mean, they really take a deep nosedive into all the aspects of the war. They have multiple channels for World War II. Nevertheless, Indy Neidell does an incredible job at explaining the military history analysis side of things. And so, there's a lot of things to go into that. I'm not sure what field of science it would fall under. I think military history is the closest thing, but it's definitely a data science intensive field. And I would also say that, if you have a STEM background, it's going to be like, if you have like a science engineering background, it's going to have a lot of those themes intertwined. So I felt compelled to throw that out there at the start of this video, especially since we're now jumping into 1942, where the war is only going to escalate, right? This is still a high tide moment for the Axis. So we're going to see more Axis victories. And that's just what it is, right? Of course, this is all simulation. This is all for fun. But I wanted to point that out, especially as our Panzer Corps proceed to launch all these intense breakthrough operations. I do find it important to just to mention, give you all a little bit more context as to what's going on in our, I guess, or what could be hypothetically what's going on in our simulation, right? I mean, this game doesn't cover anything other than just blocks on a board, but I think from a psychological perspective, it's important that, like, you understand what you're getting yourself into, because I wish I could tell you that this game, or any war game for that matter, is just a walk in the park. But the reality is that these games tend to have some sort of historical realism about them, as far as the mechanics. And so you eventually find yourself, eventually crossing paths with all aspects of history, including the parts that are a little bit harder to look into, I would say. So I'm going to leave it at that. But with that said, let's continue. Let's continue this game session as the Wehrmacht, or more specifically the German Ostheer, the Army of the East, proceeds to conquer more Soviet territory. And so with that, let's start the production, and let's get a move on here. And so, yeah, what do we got here? Just for context, I've been trying to build up the German army as best I can throughout the winter campaign. I think we did a pretty good job, but this particular month we're going to see some really big production shifts. One thing to point out for starters on the Eastern Front, I probably should start the log file. Let me do that. One thing to take note is that the winter paralysis for the Axis is now officially over. So I can actually delete this, and basically the Axis HQs are going to now be reduced back down to their usual production cost of 10 production points per HQ. Okay, and so that's something just to be aware of, is the German HQs are going to basically return to their regular costs. And that's a subtle change, but it's important, because it means that we're going to be able to spend and build up our HQs far more easily than we could during the winter period. In fact, as you saw in our playthrough, if you've been watching the whole series thus far, you'll know that I really didn't spend much on German HQs. In fact, I spent almost nil, except for OKH, which was used continuously throughout the winter campaign to move around units. And then I guess we did build up Army Group North, which very recently launched a very successful counteroffensive at Dano. And now my intention with Army Group North is to continue that momentum and see if we can actually take Leningrad by the end of the year. Might as well, because for two reasons, very quickly. One is that we can relieve Army Group North of its responsibility of the sector, or at least to some degree we can, and I can transfer a number of units, including this Panzer Army, to, say, Army Group Center. I can also transfer the command abilities to Army Group Center. It's just going to make our Army Group Center or Army Group South, it's going to make our other army groups that much stronger. That's the first reason. And the second reason is that we actually gain a little bit of production if we take Leningrad. Now, of course, how much will it cost to take Leningrad? Well, that's the thing. I'm going to try to be as economical as I can with taking Leningrad. And the way I'm going to do it is that I'm not going to blitz my way to Leningrad. Or maybe operationally I will blitz, but I'm not going to prioritize Army Group North. I'm just going to send enough resources per turn throughout the rest of the campaign to Army Group North such that it can operate independently. And so last turn I used it as a blitz. So right now its HQ is at level 1. I'm going to have to build it up by another level this turn. But for example, I'm going to have to wait until July of 1942 before I'll feel confident launching more operations with it. So hopefully that's making sense, but it's going to just take more time for Army Group North to make progress. But as long as we're able to launch very high quality operations, I think we'll be fine. So we'll see. And of course, it's just going to be a question of how quickly we can crack the Soviet defense at Novgorod. I mean, they just took a very heavy loss at Dano, but, eventually the Red Army will be able to recuperate its losses. So, there's my little spiel there with Army Group North. So anyways, we're kind of already starting the production. Let me cancel that production build, and let me just point out how the production is going to change this month. I've already mentioned one way, which is the removal of winter paralysis rules. And by the way, that only applies to the first winter. So that means for winter 1942, we don't have to worry about that winter paralysis. We will still have restriction in our movement, but we won't actually have production restrictions anymore. So our winter in theory, shouldn't be as bad this coming winter 42 as it was winter 41. So there's that. Another thing to point out is we can look at our Eurofront basic production table. You'll see that for summer 42, the Axis gained a total of 5 more production points from winter 41 to summer 42. And so those, by the way, automatically go to the Western Front. You can kind of think of the Western Front as the default production for at least Germany, or Germany / the Axis, as well as the Western Allied powers. Obviously, for the Soviets, their default is on the Eastern Front, where the Soviet Union actually is located, right? But anyways, we're going to increase the production from 27 on the Western Front to now 32. Right, so I'm increasing. So then we're at 27. This should actually be a 1. I just realized it shouldn't be a 10 pp. It should be a 1 pp. Production points. Okay, so we're going to increase this by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so from 27 to 32. That's all that happened there. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is if we look at the rule books, let's look at production allocation. So there's 2 ways the production is essentially transferred each turn, or at least in theory there's 2 ways. But the most common way is essentially transfers. But transfers are just temporary movements, and they're very inefficient. They, all the logistics that goes into transferring it, it's kind of like an emergency move. But hopefully earlier you saw that I did some Lend-Lease by the British and gave them over to the Soviets. But outside of that, the other way to transfer production is production allocations. And I guess if I want to see the specific details, I got to look at this here. But it basically says allocations can be increased only at season breaks, but can be decreased during any production phase. And I guess for details, I got to go to 21.23 and 21.37 in the rule book. So we're looking for Eastern Front allocations. This is the Med Fronts, Western Fronts, Northern Fronts. I'm looking for Eastern Front allocations. Here they are. 21.23 Eastern Front production point allocations. And, as I mentioned already, SERV production is always tracked on EF production. Hopefully, by the way, my audio, hopefully my audio is pretty good right now. I just got to make sure I'm speaking into the mic, because sometimes I've noticed that it drops a bit, and I just want to make sure audio quality is there for these videos. But anyways, there's the initial allocation. We don't have to worry about that. We already did that. It already was done automatically for us for the start of the scenario. But it says, here's where it becomes very specific. I'm not exactly sure why it was set up this way, but chances are it was done for balancing reasons. But it says once or at above 40 production point allocations from west to east, the Axis can only raise allocation by 10 production points at summer season breaks, meaning the month of June, but not until the EF has been active for 6 months. So the Eastern Front has been active for about a year now. This is a perfect opportunity to transfer 10 production points from the Eastern Front, from the Western Front to the Eastern Front. And I still am prioritizing the Eastern Front because, frankly, strategically, there's just nowhere else for the Third Reich to really achieve a victory. I mean, there's the Operation Sea Lion option, which, you can tell by the overall, if you can look carefully at the overall strength of the German units, most of the units are better suited at defending than attacking. So that's just a no-go. Not to mention the British have a very strong defense, although I guess in theory it's possible. But the British also have naval, they control the naval bodies of water. You can look at the naval bases, and Portsmouth is the naval base for the English Channel, and London apparently is the naval base for the North Sea. So it's just, sea line is very hard to do. Not impossible, but very hard to do. And then the other option, the other strategic route for the Axis is Egypt, which is what we're trying to do, or at least is part of our strategy. But the overall most important strategy, and to keep things a bit historical, we're focusing on trying to knock out Moscow, knock out the Soviet Union, because they are our greatest opponent. And as you can see, the bulk of the German army resources, in fact, military resources, are being diverted to the Eastern Front. Although I guess there's also the Battle of the Atlantic going on with the U-boats that we're not seeing in this game. Okay, so that's that. So we are going to transfer over. What I'm trying to say is that we're going to transfer over from 32 of the Western Front. I'm going to reduce it by 10, and then I'm going to give the Eastern Front a boost of 10. So now our production went from 69 up to 79. And I really hope that's right. I can double check the production. This would be a good time to double check to make sure I haven't been messing up the production. Just check it on the seasonal breaks, because sometimes I'll miss a few things here and there every now and then. But it was 54 by default. But with Soviet-conquered territory, we have Riga, Minsk, Kyiv, Odessa. That's already 4 production points. Kryvyi Rog is another 2 because it's doubled for the Axis, so that's 6 production points. Plus another 3 from Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporozhye, if I'm pronouncing that right. So we're at 9. 2 more from Kharkov puts us at 11. And then another 4 from Stalino puts us at 15. So I think I did the math right. So we're at 79 this time on the Eastern Front. And now I can go ahead and build up Army Group North, increase that. So we're now down to, from 79 down to 69. I'm going to build up all my HQs, including OKW, Army Group South, and then also this kind of mini Army Group A. So it's another, what is that? I think I've spent 4 HQs altogether. So we're looking at 40 production points. That leaves me now with 39 production points remaining for the Eastern Front. So we can build up a number of units, and there's actually a lot of infantry that I can start building up, because most of the units that are now available to build up, I kind of pull them out from the front line, or from like their frontline sectors in the last turn. So now I can build these up a bit more. So there's actually a lot of infantry. Each infantry costs 4 production points. So 39, we can build up to 9. So that's 1, 2, 3 right there. 4. Build up these 2. 5, 6. And then I don't have much left. So 39 minus 6 times 24, or 6 times 4 is 24. So that leaves me with 15 production points remaining. No, I said 39, right? I think I just built, I really hope I did my math right there. I'm already like losing track of units. No, I built 3 here, and then I built this one, and then these 2. Man. So that was 6, and that leaves me with 15. I wanted to build up these Panzer Corps, and I'm beginning to realize that I can't. In fact, I can't even build up Army Group North. I can't even replace the losses that I had essentially sustained in the last turn. I can't even build those up right now, which is a complete and total bummer. So unfortunately, I still failed to achieve my fundamental goal, which was that by summer 1942, I would have all the German units on the Eastern Front at full strength. And unfortunately, from what I'm looking at right now, I simply just can't build them up. I don't have enough production. So there's another armored unit here. Let's build that up. That leaves me with 7 production points left over. For example, this 24th Panzer Corps should be built up, I think. But I can't because I only have 7 production points left. It cost 8. So I'm actually a little short on production right now. Look at this. This 57th should definitely be built up as well. Yeah, that's a bummer. So I'm seeing that there is a bit of a reserve, like even at least the reserve is deployed on the front line. I know that we have more units overall on the Eastern Front than we did, I think, in 1941. So I give myself some credit there. But overall, I just wish we had more units. So anyways, I only have 7 left. I'm pretty sure the best thing to buy right now would be just this mech unit. Build up a mech unit. Probably the best unit that I can afford right now. But I really wanted to prioritize the infantry. Right? And this mech unit is good at defending. But right now, I'm not too concerned about having it defend here. I'm not sure where to deploy these mech corps. I don't want them attacking. I'd rather use them defending, and then try to transfer my Panzer Corps to where we're attacking, right? But as far as just coming up with the best setup right now, it's hard to say. I wonder if there's any other units I can build up. Not really. I would love to build up this armored unit. This is the unit that really should be built up, I think. I mean, I could reduce 1, and that leaves me with 3 extra. I guess to be as cost effective as possible, I'm actually going to reduce 2 infantry here. I'm going to reduce 2 infantry, and I'm actually going to go ahead and build up this Panzer Corps. I don't like seeing it at level 1 like that. Might as well build it up a little bit more. We have plenty of Panzer, at least 2 Panzer Corps. I may transfer 1 out as we try to push on Novgorod at some point, at least on the next turn. And then the last thing to build up, I guess, is just the 55th Mech Corps here. And there really isn't any more German units, right? I can deploy some, actually, I can deploy some extra units for June. Yeah, we can deploy a few more. I can deploy, for example, this infantry. I'm going to put it in Amsterdam. And then you can see that I actually gain another veteran unit, except this one is brown. And this actually I can deploy in North Africa. So might as well. It is a militia unit, but it is a Panzer. It is a Panzer Corps militia unit, so I believe it has double defense. So that's kind of interesting. But I'll tell you now, what we really need in North Africa is not defensive units. I need attacking units in North Africa to take Alexandria. So let's go ahead and switch over to North African production. This would be a good time to decide if I want to actually boost North African production or not, or do I want to continue focusing my production on the Western Front? And something tells me I probably want to continue focusing on the Western Front because I should have an easier time transferring units from the Western Front to, say, the Eastern Front throughout 1942. And I don't know, I mean, yes, I want to prioritize North Africa, but I think the Western Front still takes priority overall, especially given how the Allies can just pull off some sneaky operations. I mean, we're looking pretty good right now on the Western Front, I gotta say. 22 production is a nice round, even number, so I can use that per turn. Yeah, it's just a matter of deciding what the best strategy is. I mean, maybe for this 1 month, I think for this 1 month, I may just go ahead and I may just go ahead and transfer over a production to North Africa anyways. I think we're going to go ahead and do it. Ideally, you know what would be ideal right now for the Axis is if we were to try to launch an attack on Malta in 1942. That would probably be, I really do think that would probably be the best strategy, because that we attack Malta in 1942. But the problem is that we don't have any airborne units, which is a dang shame. Do the Italians have airborne units? They don't. We don't have any airborne units. I think taking Malta would be excellent, because then it would actually open up our supplies in Libya a whole lot more. But since I don't have an airborne unit, you know, it's going to be hard. I mean, if we get repulsed, you know, it's going to be a real challenge. It's going to be real costly as well. But I do have a few HQs, you know, that in theory I could start building up and trying to have them mobilized to attack Malta. Malta is no easy island to take because it is a fortress, and this fortress has triple defense. So it's no easy fortress to take. And we have like no supplies when we attack Malta. The Axis, by the way, have no beachheads. So it is cumbersome. The best year to take it, I think, is like 1940, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, unless the Italians had an airborne unit that we could have used, I just don't see any other better way to attack. And I'm pretty sure we can only use one unit per invasion site per movement phase. So since we're not attacking Malta, I guess I am going to go ahead and transfer over production to the Mediterranean front and just try to gamble an attack on Alexandria. Because I mean, I say we go for it. Mine as well. Our success are frankly really hard to say. I can't even tell you if we have a really good chance of succeeding or not. But I do know that, yeah, we're going to definitely overstretch ourselves if we try to invade Egypt. Maybe I don't focus on North Africa. I don't obsess over North Africa. Maybe I actually minimize North Africa right now. And then I just take my sweet old time in North Africa, and then I actually transfer that production to, say, the Western Front, and try to focus on building up more units for the Eastern Front. They can still use probably more ground units, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure they're always in need of more units. So, maybe that's an overall better strategy. I mean, if I look at 1942 and I look at the actual units that that can arrive on the Eastern Front, nothing special. Just a lot of militia units. We do get some extra fortresses, right? So we'll be able to fortify the Western Front pretty well. We do get another mech unit, but what I really wanted are these Panzer Corps, including we got some Waffen SS Panzer Corps. We've got Western HQ at at least another Panzer Army that I could transfer over to the Eastern Front in 1943. So oddly enough, I would actually make the argument that the Germans are in a better position in 1943 economically to defeat the Soviet Union than they were in 1942. But the problem in 1943 is that, number one, the Soviet Union itself the army is far more battle hardened. They have a lot more experience, and their economy is a lot more stable in 1943 than what it was in 1942. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that, of course, by 1943, the Axis are increasingly defending more and more territory in the Western Front, right? There's the Battle of Tunisia, the Sicilian and Italian campaigns. And so more and more German units are being diverted to the Western Front in 1943. So overall, their combat strength relative to their strength in 1942 was lower in 1943. But when you actually look at the quality of the German army, I'm tempted to make the argument that the 1943 German army was, at least on paper, stronger than its 1942 predecessor, basically, which is interesting. So there's a lot of things to sort of look at. I would argue that World War II has a lot of shifting points of reference. A lot of we'll say just like, a lot of shifting perspectives, but not just perspectives, like the actual magnitude of your strength, if you can even quantify those values. A lot of things are shifting around throughout these years of war, not just here in the European theater, but also in the Pacific theater as well. And man, it'd be really cool to kind of like take a closer look at that type of information. So with that said, we have, 22 production on this turn. And I just realized that like, I can try to maximize my HQs as soon as possible, but every turn that I do, I'm going to be losing 2 production points, meaning that I won't be able to build up any ground unit. I can also skip my production for the Western Front, but then that's going to slow down building up OBW. I kind of want OBW to be built up at full strength as soon as possible. So I think my general consensus, I may even reduce man, there's just so many moving parts. It's so hard to make a decision. I'll tell you now. I would argue this is my general consensus though. There is about a 50-50 chance that we can take Egypt. I'm going to be frank. about a 50-50 chance that we can take it. We have a lot of production on our hands that we got to build up. 50-50 chance we can take it. It's not going to be low cost. That's one option. That's case one. Case two is that we forego the invasion of Egypt, and instead we prioritize a focus on our Western combat strength, and just try to make that the priority. It's just fortify the Western Front. Forget about the Eastern Front, or excuse me, the Mediterranean Front. Focus on the Western Front. Make that our priority, because right now, I mean, yes, it would be interesting to attack, but we have all these logistical complications that come with attacking. It's not the most exciting move for the Axis, but I think strategically it's going to make it a lot easier for us to focus on the Eastern Front, and that's really where the battle is going to be won or lost. So I think I'm going to go with that strategy, meaning that I may even reduce the Mediterranean Front production by another 5 production points, give it to the Western Front, so the Western Front has plenty of production that we can use to build up as many units as we can on the Western Front. And then that should eventually correspond to having at least more HQs on the Eastern Front. Like, I wouldn't have to worry about, OKW being on the Western Front. I could transfer it over to the Eastern Front and use it over there for some extra Supreme moves. And I still want to do that as part of my strategy. So let's just try it out. We're going to go with that. I guess I'm kind of fueling the German bias in a way. So yeah, I guess I know that last turn I was really hyping up an attack on Egypt, but I'm just like looking at the big strategy right now, and I just don't think the Axis really have enough to take Egypt. I mean, it's gonna be really challenging for them to do so. It will definitely make for some really exciting combat, though. I'll tell you that much. But having a much more fortified Western Front definitely is an attractive idea for sure. So it's now or never, because I know that if we wait any longer, the British are gonna only get stronger. And it would be really nice if we take Alexandria. And I think it may actually help accelerate Turkey into the war as well. Okay, so you know what? We're going to still focus on the Mediterranean Front, just because I think it'll be more exciting. So I think with that said, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to just change this dice over here. It's going to be clear. This is over here as well. So I'm going to transfer then 5 more production points to the Mediterranean Front, which I know I'm going to regret doing later on for sure, but we're just going to have to make do with what we have. So that's going to leave us with only 17 production points for the summer of 1942 on the Western Front. Pretty much just as limited production as we had during Operation Barbarossa. So, very limited Western Front movement, but hopefully just enough to establish a skeleton defense of the West. And I know that our defense right now is not strong enough. I know that much. But our Mediterranean Front production will go up by 5. So now they're going to be at 25 production points. And they're going to match the British, who, by the way, are going to actually get stronger with their own production on the Mediterranean Front. So let's roll the 5 dice for the Axis. They're going to get, 9? Plus another 5 is 14. Now, we also had 11 saved up from last month, so that's going to put us at 25 in total. Nice. And let's go ahead and build up some units. Build up this Italian unit. That's 6. Build up this HQ. That's 16. That only leaves me with 9 left. Might as well build up this Light Africa Corps unit there as well. Okay? And that's it. That's all we can afford for building up. Not a whole lot. In fact, barely anything. And then as far as the Western Front production is concerned, let's go ahead and build up OKW. That only leaves me with 7 left on the on the Western Front. With that 7, I say we build up another infantry and build up another militia. And then that should be enough. What I really want to build up, though, actually we're gonna build up this guy up here in case the British do anything sneaky up there. Also, got to keep in mind the Axis, the Allies may even try to go for Denmark. You know, that's always another possibility too. Although they're not going to have any combat support. That's the good news. So yeah, that's it. That's all we have for Axis production. Not a whole lot, but at least it's better than nothing. So that's that. And then that's it. That's it for the Axis production. I just realized I probably should have done Ally production first because of the turn sequence, but oh well. So we'll switch over to the Allies now and go ahead and do their production. And then we'll switch back to the Axis and then wrap up the turn. Or start the combat in this turn. So let me go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and focus on the British. Well, let's look at the general production that the Allies gain starting in the summer of 1942. The Allies gain another 10 on the Western Front. So that's substantial. The Soviets gain another 6. So the Soviet production is now going to go up from 56 to 62, almost as good as it was during the start of Operation Barbarossa. So Soviet production is looking pretty good. And then the Allies, they're going to gain another 10 on the Western Front. So they're at 17 right now. Now they're going to be up at 27. They're matching. Oh no, they actually have more production than the Axis do. So they're at 27. I'm going to transfer over 5 to the Mediterranean front. So the Mediterranean front for the British is now going to go up to 30. So they're 5 production points greater than the Axis. But then it's going to be reduced by what? It's 30. And then this is going to go down to from 27 down to 22 for the British. Okay. And now for the British turn, let's go ahead and build up our HQs. Let's just focus on British HQs, make that the #1 priority. So we have 2 more left over. We're just going to toss those out. Don't really need them. Do we get any reinforcements right now for the Allies? Probably should hide these units. Don't think so. Not for 1942 at least, or at least not for a while. The American units will eventually arrive, but they don't arrive really until the end of the turn. Not until the end of the year, rather. Like not until October, pretty much. So that's that. That's that for the British. Mediterranean front, though, we can now roll 6 dice for the British. And did we have any production saved up? We did not. Change this label to 0. I get myself confused there. Do that. I'm not sure what we had for the Finnish. According to what I have here, the Finnish are going to have 6 production points. Yeah. I mean, October, November, December, January, and then I guess there was 3 more. Yeah, October, November, December, January was 1 sequence for the Finnish production. Another February, March, April was another sequence of Finnish production. And then I'm pretty sure we skipped the production for May. And then we're going to go ahead and skip the Finnish production another turn. How about that? Yeah. I don't know why I'm thinking about the Finnish right now, when we should be focusing on the British. But yeah, did I roll the 2 dice? Not yet. But it looks like the British don't have any production saved over from the last turn. So we're going to roll. Oh, we got 3 6s there. Oh boy. So anyways, they get technically 4 6s. So that's 24 production for the British. Pretty good on this turn. The British can definitely use some more units. So let's go ahead and build up this Anzac group, rebuild that unit. That's going to cost 6. We can rebuild this. So I said 24, right? We only have 1 more unit to build up. or I could build up one more unit if I rebuild a cadre mech unit there. But I have 18 total left over, and I don't know what to spend it on. I wanted to build up more, like rebuild this Mediterranean theater HQ, right? And I also have some lost British units here that could also be rebuilt as well. So I'm not sure. I'm just not sure what we should build with the British. I'm not entirely sure, but we have 18 left. If I rebuild this, that only leaves me with 9, which is kind of an inconvenient number. I think I'm just going to go ahead and build up this other mech group here. And that's going to cost another 18 production points, I'm pretty sure, because we're building it up from cadre. And yeah, it's going to cost 18. So we have basically a 2 reserve. The British have a strong reserve. And our front line, at least at Alexandria, at least we have 2 units there. I'm suggesting that we try to get more units. Try to have them move to El Alamein if we can. Fortify El Alamein, because then it's going to free up Alexandria just a bit more. But of course, we're going to be more vulnerable to a German attack. But I think it's worth it. I hope it's worth it. And then we'll basically have a very strong armored reserve for the British. And then let's not forget that I still have a unit. You can't see it. It's in the corner of the map here. But I have this British tank unit all the way located in whatchamacallit. There it is. Basically located right here in the southern zone in South Africa. So with that, I think we finished the production for the British. Now let's switch over to the Soviet production. And Soviets have a lot to build up. They have 62 production points though, which is very nice. Let's go and focus on Stavka. That's an easy one. Also the Western Front HQ, another easy build. So that's already 20 production points. Go ahead and rebuild up this HQ here. So we have, I said 20 production points. Let's build up actually this HQ. I think we're going to leave these other 2 under strength for now. In total, the Soviets have, I believe, 10 production points for the Eastern Front scenario. I can also compare that to like the historical setup scenario that was made by the developers, and you can look at how much the Soviets actually had for the game scenario. It's a good comparison. And I think for the Soviets here, for the 1942 high tide scenario, it looks like they have 11 HQs, 11 combat value HQs. Right now I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I count 12 right now. So we actually are doing pretty well. So I'm going to stick to 3 HQs there for the Soviets. So that's 30 production points for the Soviets. And that's going to leave me with from 62 down to 32. And that 32, I'm just going to prioritize mostly on the Soviet infantry, but also a bit of the Soviet armored reserves as well. So let's focus on infantry first. I don't want to have any like cadre infantry in 1942. I want them to be at least level 2. So that's 1. Here 2. 3. Okay, that's 3 already. 4. I have 32 left, so I just spent 8. That leaves me with 24 remaining for the Soviets. Let's build up the Soviet armor. Each one costs 4 apiece. So that's going to leave me with another 12 remaining for 1942. And then, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea to build up our these mech corps. Maybe build these units up. Let's go ahead and do that. Or at least mech corps, or maybe our cavalry. Right? Build up some of our cavalry as well. Let's build up this cavalry here. That leaves me with 6 remaining. So I'll build up this infantry. That leaves me with 4 more. And then I know that 1 unit here could be built up to full strength. I have 4 more. Oh, you know what? We should build up these 2 units as well. So that last build was where? That leaves me with 4 more. I may just cancel building up 1 infantry unit then. Not sure which one that will be. I guess it was this one, right? I think it was the 10th Army, right? Yeah, it did pull back. And then I'll go ahead, I have 6 left, go ahead and build up this cavalry and this shock. So notice that this turn, I'm not building up any new Soviet units, which is, I don't know if that's the right move or not. I still have 2 dead Soviet infantry, technically 3 when you include this Soviet naval unit, right? But I just want to make sure the current units we have are at full strength. And we're trying to build up our armored reserve as well. They don't really need to take too much priority for at least for now, but I want them to be at level 4 as soon as possible. Or at least by winter of 1942, I want them to be a level 4. But I'm thinking right now it would be a good investment to build them up. But all the other Soviet units, I mean, we've done our best. We have some strong mech units here in the center. But, I mean, it's far from perfect. It's good. It's not great, not terrible. But outside of that, I mean, we have a pretty good setup, I have to say. Leningrad, of course, being a bit vulnerable right now. May have to transfer a reinforcement there, and I really don't have too many units to transfer over. In fact, I actually may change that. I'm actually going to change that. I'm going to reduce this 3rd tank army back to its original level, and let's go ahead and build up another Soviet infantry. Build up this 22nd Army, rebuild it, because it was lost at Denault. Basically rebuild it. It will be very useful at defending Leningrad in the coming battles. And then I could also reduce my HQs if I really wanted to. Maybe I should. Maybe I should reduce this HQ back down to 11. And then that is going to give me 10 more. In fact, that does open up a lot. So I can actually build a substantial, definitely a lot more with that. So we'll rebuild that 3rd tank army. That's going to leave me with 6. Let's rebuild these Soviet units here. That leaves me with now 2 more. And those remaining 2, probably should put on the 6th Army over here. So we have at least 1 full strength unit there in Vorshilovgrad right there. So we have a very strong defense even in this Ukraine area. Even if the Germans want to break through, I mean, they're going to have to contend with a very strong Soviet cluster there. So we'll see what the German army does, but our strategic priority for the Soviets is defend, defend, defend. And then I can also deploy 1 more tank army. I think we're going to put this tank army... I could put it in Stalingrad as a preemptive measure. You know, if the Germans do try to break out, I could put a unit in Stalingrad right now. I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm going to put it in Kalinin instead, because I do have a plan of action here. Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable to me. Okay. And then I also have that Soviet airborne unit that I could deploy. Do I want to deploy it? I don't think so, not yet. So that sums up the production sequence for this game pretty much. I think the only thing left was the finish. And I don't know, with 6 production points, do I want to build up anything for the finish? Not really. Although I guess I could rebuild a lost unit. I think we're going to hold off. I'm going to focus on letting the Mannerheim HQ get a little stronger before I do anything else. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. That's going to sum up the turn. I do appreciate your patience in my rambles. Hopefully this is entertaining. But, you know, we've done enough for this turn. I think we can now actually start the production sequence. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to actually take a quick break here myself. and then I will come back, and then we will actually do the combat of movement sequences, all that good stuff. So yeah, let's stay tuned for that.